So, hi, Shannon. Welcome to OBIZ. Today, we're talking with Shannon McCarty-Caplan. She's a growth marketing leader and strategist, and she's the former head of marketing for Pipedream Products. Now, she's working with McCaplan Consulting Group, where she helps businesses thrive during, change and like this COVID crisis we have going. So, welcome to the podcast, Shannon.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So you've had quite an interesting career. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to work at Pipedream?
Right. So, on paper, you could say it might look unexpected that I made a transition from, 20 years in high tech marketing, working with software companies and digital advertising to running marketing over at Pipedream Products and the adult pleasure product, sex tech space. But in reality, I have been interested in sexual health and women's wellness for as long as I can remember. I worked at my campus gynecology center all throughout college. I was the de facto WebMD for sexuality questions before we had the internet for all of these things. And I served on the board of the Chicago Women's Health Center, which provides compassionate, comprehensive care for women and trans women and folks in Chicagoland. So, and plus, my husband is actually a professor focusing on LGBTQ studies
Oh,
and
no way.
sexuality research and education. So, my life, has been I've been involved in sexual health and wellness
Okay.
for very for most of my adult life.
Okay,
It's
so that
very
makes
interesting
sense.
to me.
So it wasn't surprising. It just it made sense logically with your interest.
Right, right. And it was such, when I was approached with the opportunity to come to Pipe Dream, I had actually accepted another opportunity with a software company, but this was too good to pass up, and it was an opportunity to really take what I care so much about, helping women and have sexual pleasure and
Yeah.
helping transform the industry with wellness products. Um, Plus combining that, bridging that with my skill set of helping businesses grow and during times of change and um, really helping businesses stand out in a crowded space. And so
Yeah.
I thought, wow, what a cool opportunity for what I call the second half of my career. Like what a fun pivot. And I was really glad I made that change. It was really
Excellent.
exciting.
That is pretty cool. I mean, so
Yeah.
could you tell me, I guess, a little bit more about how, as a new entrant into the space, like how does it compare to other tech sectors? Like, are there any differences, similarities?
I would say it is completely night and day. For example, on one of my interviews, I, with HR no less, they ran out of meeting rooms, and so we were at a meeting table in the pleasure product showroom in the hardcore section. So I was wedged between very large male masturbators, women's vaginas and legs and rear ends, talking very seriously with the woman in HR who was oblivious to our surroundings. And I thought, wow, this is a very different place. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I just loved her professionalism surrounded by all this. And then I knew that, yes, I could be in the space and it's not, you know, it was not what I thought it was going to be. And I love that. And I love how open everything was,
Yeah.
and the ability to talk about such, you know, interesting things that would very much be taboo in my other places of work,
Yeah, that makes
corporate
sense.
America. So yeah, I knew it would be very different, but uh, there's also there's the companies that originally started this industry. They're rather old school in a sense, a lot of handshake deals, some family run, and this is the way we've been doing things. And so I had to learn that if I couldn't just instant message someone, I had to get up and walk across the office and talk to the person. What a
Imagine.
concept, where I'm used to like people 5 feet away, like, don't bother me now.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah.
couldn't even get folks to respond to text messages or IM. So it was a breath of fresh air in a sense,
Yeah.
that old school way of doing things. But there's also those challenges because a lot of the old school companies, it's similar to corporate America, that they're run by predominantly white men, right?
Yeah.
And there's the sex and pleasure industry has historically not always done well, by including women's perspectives and racial equity and affirmation of queer communities. But the more time I spent in the industry, I saw that folks, different companies were trying to make change, and so I
Yeah.
see those efforts happening, and I was excited by that. Like, okay, this is a good place for me. I can do
Yeah.
this. Um, and corporate America is struggling with the same thing, and we see that now with Black Lives Matter movement. Like, everyone has an opportunity to improve, in this space in particular.
Understatement. Understatement.
Right, right. So yeah, so it was. I figured there's a lot of good I could do, and that excited
Yeah.
me a
Very cool. I mean, I think what's interesting for me talking to you in particular is that you have experience with growth marketing. And for most of the industry, marketing is a really difficult touch point, difficult subject because, you know, promoting products on Facebook, you often get blocked or you get your ads removed from
lot.
Instagram, for example, get your ads removed. And just really getting the words out there, getting, promoting your products, it's just really challenging for people in the sex tech space and businesses operating in this space. So I'm curious, like, what was your experience with those constraints, and how did you, if you had any negative experiences, how did you navigate, uh, you know, those barriers?
Right. So you're 100% correct. The sex tech space has all those challenges with reaching end consumers using social media. You can't, right?
Yeah,
In the same way that you typically could if you're at you're just an off the shelf consumer packaged good. Um, but what intrigued me so much about this challenge was the lack of data. And what I do is product marketing. That is my wheelhouse. And it's product marketing is essentially, understanding an end consumer need and connecting that to the product creation process and putting something out into the market that meets consumer needs, has a unique value proposition, and helps a company stand out with their product in a crowded marketplace. And so there, with the flood of Chinese factories taking their products directly to market on Amazon, and a lot of it's almost a commoditization of sex toys, right? It's more important now than ever to release something that is unique and really meets the needs of a more sophisticated consumer who has the ability, not to ask the girl in the dorm when there's no internet, like how to get off, but what do I do? How do I do this?
yeah,
But also, people can read reviews, and people have access to so much more information. So it's important to really understand who the consumers are, and that is an area that I get really excited about helping solve, and was working towards at my time at Pipedream. And the challenge is that a lot of, as you know, modality group, like, the data
yeah,
hasn't been isn't necessarily there. And
yeah,
I think a lot historically companies put products on the market and there was interest and they would sell them, but they had no idea who's buying them or how people were using them or what problem it solved, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
if they were missing the mark and not actually solving another key problem, or was that product thrown in the trash? And so there's so much opportunity, and that's why I'm excited, as part of the McCaplan Consulting Group, helping businesses understand this information. and
yeah.
and
Really
and it's
cool.
much easier to tackle those other challenges because somehow big tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, they all work around it. Sex tech can do the same. We definitely work
No, I definitely agree with you on that. And, I think it's interesting the point you brought up about the consumers being just a lot more discerning now. They have a
around.
lot more information at their fingertips. And even if it's still a taboo space, it's just, there's more resources. So I definitely think it's
Right.
interesting that you mentioned data and that we have to be more data driven in how we make our decisions if we're going to
Yes.
actually be more inclusive of the people who could potentially need these products, but also just giving pleasure access to more people um, in the world. So I think that was a very
Absolutely.
interesting insight for sure. So one thing I'm like really excited to ask you about, as someone who started out in different spaces and moved into sex tech, is what are, I guess, 3 tips that you would give someone entering into sex tech who have no prior experience to it?
Oh, I would say number one, come with an open mind.
Okay.
Definitely come with an open mind and get comfortable with number two, like get comfortable with being potentially uncomfortable or talking about things that you may not have typically discussed with people outside of the home before. But also, how are you gonna, talk about those things at work appropriately, and then at home when people ask you where you work.
Oh,
And number
interesting.
right, that I needed to work on that a lot, like with my son's kindergarten teacher. These things come up, um, and then you
That's
worry,
actually
like,
really fair. Yeah.
yeah, like how are you going to be perceived? And I know that uh, the folks in our space are not very active on LinkedIn, for example. Like I
Yeah.
don't see a lot of people publicly connecting or admitting where they work, and that's sad, right? And that just goes to show that's another very large barrier um, for this industry. And so then, because I do think that things are changing, be adaptable. Number three, be adaptable because this is a rapidly transforming industry. So buckle up.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your time. So if people want to find you on LinkedIn or like on the interwebs, where can they find you?
Right, I'm on LinkedIn, Shannon McCarty-Caplan with a
Okay,
C, and also McCaplan.com.
cool. And we'll share your information in the show notes so people can find you pretty easily.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool.
It was a pleasure meeting with
Thank
you.
you so much.